forms in which data might hold. I mean, we've seen some of the most public cases have been on tapes and disks and laptops with files, etc., not on the primary source of the data itself. We take a three-step approach to data gathering when we go through this process. The first is identification of the departments and processes like we talked about. What's applicable, what's not. And during that phase, during those interviews, you can kind of gauge, all right, where should we be really focusing our time? Maybe we include some departments in the later discussions. We're not going to focus a lot of time and effort there because that's not their, it doesn't drive their business. Sensitive information doesn't drive their business. The second step is the inventory. Once we've identified the groups, departments, processes that are in scope, then we say, all right, let's create an inventory. The inventory is always rough at first. You send out some questionnaires that say, create a list for me. Walk around, inventory paper for me. Discuss with your department at your next meeting where all you have electronic files that may contain sensitive information. And it's always rough at first, and you always will refine it as the process continues. But having a good, holistic department list is important. One of the things we stress with people is that, if Jane Smith is responsible for Department A, she's responsible for all of Department A. She's responsible for talking to people, for inquiring with IT that may support Department A, truly understanding, all right, what are all the different information assets that we have? And then Jane may play a continual role in updating that inventory, or if she becomes aware of an additional asset, of adding that to the inventory and risk assessment process. So during that inventory, once we identify what we have, we've got this master list of what we have, then we try to classify it in some way. And companies that have strong data privacy programs develop some sort of a data classification scheme. So that could either be based on a number scheme, sensitive data 1 through 5. Some people use colors, words. There's no sort of standard. It's whatever is going to fit your corporate culture and be interpreted the best. And this is because companies have different... The term confidential at one company to another is going to be interpreted very differently. So you want to have a scheme that's going to align that, because a large number of people are going to be asked to align data with that scheme, and so you want to have something that's easily interpreted and understood. Once we identify what we have, where it is, and how sensitive it is, then we have to measure it against a certain baseline set of controls. We have to identify what are the types of key things that we need to do to protect consumer data. Perhaps with mobile media, we need to encrypt it. With paper files, they need to be in locked containers or secured while in transit. With computer systems, we need to have strong passwords and access management. We have to have good patch management, etc. So we identify for each asset type what are the different types of controls that are pertinent to that asset type. When we do this control analysis, we're going to have physical, operational, and technical controls. We run the full gamut of the different types of things that can protect that information. You see an example there of mobile media. Some of the example controls that we've used in the past of measurements that we've taken for mobile media. So if we do our inventory of mobile media and we determine that we have 100 different types of mobile media across our organization, then we're going to benchmark each of them against these controls and say, all right, are the controls sufficient to protect the data for each of these categories? Okay, once we've gone through and we've done our controls analysis, we can truly begin to assess risk. We can assess where are our gaps. Where do we have discrepancies between what we think should be an appropriate control? For example, media is secured while it's in transit. Media is shredded, etc. Where is there a discrepancy between what we would expect and what we found? And that's where you start to get into risk mitigation plans, gap analysis, etc., where companies start to take action items, start to build a list of to-dos, so to speak, where they can say, all right, here are the different things we need to do to bring our current activities up to what we would expect to happen in our organization. We talked at the beginning of the presentation that everybody plays a role in information security. Everybody plays a role in data privacy, and so an important event that we have at the beginning of any of our projects is to explain the role of each player in a kickoff type meeting or in some sort of a forum where we can explain, hey, you have a role, you have a skin in this game. Keeping our name out of the paper is your job just as much as it is my job as an information security professional, because you own the data, you manage the data, you deal with it day to day. So the individual departments have a role to provide a comprehensive inventory of applicable information. So that may mean sitting down at a department meeting, that may mean doing some investigation, and we make sure it's clear to them that they're going to have to spend some time investigating, because truly an information security professional is not going to be able to understand every facet of a business, a department and what they do. They're going to have to rely upon the leaders of that business to do an inventory, to do investigation, to appropriately inventory where all private data sits. Accurately and timely about the controls in place, the type of data. So one of the examples we always bring up with individual departments is, let's say that there's a file cabinet. In the file cabinet is very sensitive paper-based documents. And the file cabinet's got a lock on it, and the file cabinet has a key to it, and it's supposed to be locked at all times. But everybody knows that key is in that cabinet and pretty much never gets taken out of the cabinet. That's pretty much where that key sits. And so, yes, technically the repository is locked, but the key sits in the file cabinet at all times. We ask them to report honestly and be upfront about controls that are working and controls that aren't working. Because that's a good opportunity as an information security professional for you to go back and say, all right, tell me why this isn't working. And they may say, well, we got one key and we've got 20 people that need to get in this at all hours of the day, and people leave and then they don't return their keys, and it's just causing too much of a problem. And at that point, as a security professional, you can recommend an alternative solution. Maybe you can integrate it into a key card system that you have for the building, or an alternative form of access. Maybe you can evaluate, all right, what is this paper really being used for? Do 20 people really need access to this, or might we be able to image this data and make it available online instead of in paper format? So as a security professional, we ask them to be upfront and honest, with no judgment on what we find. This is an initial risk assessment, and that allows us to come up with creative solutions of how to protect that data. In some cases, too, it's a matter of truncation. It's a matter of taking the data off the forms that would be harmful if it got into the wrong hands. So all of you, are information security experts, and so in helping companies and organizations protect data privacy, your role is really to establish the standard. What is the baseline against which we want to measure ourselves? You know that a tape that is unencrypted or the data is in plain text is a threat if it leaves the protected walls of an organization. And so you establish the standards that no magnetic media leaves these four walls without being encrypted. And then you work with individual departments to say, how can we make this work for you? Really, I think the key to success is that understanding, is making sure you keep in mind that people are just trying to do their job. They're using that data to further sales, to increase profits, etc. within the organization. And so really providing an atmosphere of support while you are critiquing practices is important. The risks of poor data safeguarding. A lot of our security officers do a good job of copying some of those articles out, emailing them to their companies and saying, all right, here's an article of a company that's lost data, and let me translate that to you, what it means to us and what we do to prevent the same kind of things from happening. So really, employee awareness programs that are robust are necessary for total participation in privacy programs. When you review objective data from the risk assessment, like we were saying, you're able to make educated subjective determinations of risk. So somebody reports back and they say, I have this application, it has this data in it, and these are the controls. As an information security professional, you're able to make more subjective decisions of whether or not you feel that's appropriate or not appropriate given data privacy risks. You can evaluate for an application, for example, whether or not it's an internet-facing application, an internal-facing application, and what are the risks associated with each given the type of data, etc. And so you're asked to take objective data and make subjective analysis on that data. Okay, so the end result. And as I'm going through the end result, if you do have any questions, please jot them down, or we can even just have you jot your name down and we can ask questions in a few minutes. The end result of a successful data privacy program is you know where it is and what it is. You know in what formats that you store consumer data. You